Welcome to the Global Business Chat series. In these interviews, Wes is chatting about all things business to serious professionals from a variety of industries. Listen in to hear more about their challenges, opportunities, and the lessons they've learned along the way.
Hi, Leon. Thanks for joining the Global Business Chat today. Could we start off by giving us a brief kind of detailed description of how you got into the construction business?
Yeah, of course. Okay, so once I left full-time education and obviously further education, I went to work for the government. I worked for the MOD as a civil servant for just over 7 years. And during that period, they put me through my NVQ qualifications in building pathology and construction. I did that for, just over 7 years. And then I got a bit disillusioned really working for the government. As you can imagine, it's a lot of red tape, and it was very slow to actually get anything done. So I ended up leaving and going to work for completely out of the construction. Well, sort of. I was still in property, but I went to work for a local company who did property maintenance. They did contract cleaning. They actually did house removals and storage, and they did what was at the time the infant process of repossessing property.
Okay.
That's where I met Paul, my business partner. We both worked at that company, and I worked there for about nearly 8 years. During that period, the guy who owned the company split it up into four, and he sold he kept the removals and storage part of the business, and he sold the maintenance, he sold the contract cleaning, and he sold the repossessions part. And Paul went to work with the guy who he sold the repossessions part to. Paul did that for a couple of years. Then he bought the business from this chap, and he'd said to me the whole time, look, one day we should do something together, etc., etc. And then in 1999, it was 2000 that was when I started working there. So it was 2005. I just came to a point. I'd done okay on a couple of houses I'd done up and lived in, and the time felt right. So Paul and I decided we were going to start working together. I bought half of the business from him, and that's where the Homeworks brand started. And we worked in asset recovery. In one form or another, we worked in asset recovery for the next 6-7 years. One of the things I recognised when we got into the business was that, we needed to diversify. Paul already had a lot of good ideas on how to do that. So we started to do minor maintenance work. And we went from, when I joined the business in 2005, 2006, we had, I think, 7 full-time staff. By 2010, we had 40. So, once you've got the people within your business structure, then it's a lot easier to diversify. And we started to do that, and then it just sort of gathered momentum, etc., etc. We were doing small maintenance, then we started to do small refurbishments, then we started to do slightly larger refurbishments, then we started to build houses, and we along the line, we brought the right people in to manage that. 2010 was a difficult period because of the financial crash. And our business contracted from over 40 staff down to like 10 within 4 or 5 months. And at that point, we decided we were going to start to lose the asset recovery side of our business and just concentrate solely on maintenance and refurbishment and construction. And that's where we've gone from there, and that's where we find ourselves now.
Excellent. Thank you. So we found over the last 18 months, it's been a particularly difficult time just in general, I think, with the economy and the unknown with COVID. And in the construction sector, we've been working with a lot of clients, looking at sort of like the turnover in relation to wages and splits, etc., so that the premium's correct for that time. What have your challenges been over the last 18 months as a business, and how have you come through those?
Okay, well, I mean, yeah, obviously COVID has been it's been a fairly major impact to our business as it has to many others. Where we've been, I think, lucky, and I say lucky, I mean, I think you make your own luck in life, and we we've certainly, made luck. We've certainly had bad luck, which again is probably down to us more than anything else. But actually, 2020 was our best year for maybe 7-8 years. And I think that's solely down to the fact, and that was right in the, where COVID took up 70% of that year. But I think the reasons why is that we're business to business only. We don't work for the general public. I look after the commercial side of our business, so like commercial clients, that is. And a lot of them would just use the opportunity of COVID, where businesses were either in hibernation or they were operating but working from home. And a lot of them use the opportunity to minimize their business interruption and really hit, they've obviously budgeted for, I don't think, obviously there was a lot of unknowns. I don't think anyone could have known that it was going to persist as it did. But I think a lot of businesses thought, well, we've got this period now. If we go ahead and do, planned works that maybe we've budgeted for over the next 1 or 2 years, we do it now, is going to be no interruption to our business. There's no one in our offices. There's no one in our warehouses. There's no one in our, in our premises. So why don't we do it? And for that reason, we did okay. It was 2010 was a good year for us. We had some fairly major projects which we started right at the beginning of COVID. And it worked out well for us because we were able to isolate ourselves on these sites away from everybody else, and it was as long as we were following the guidelines and creating a safe working environment, we were able to persist with those. So 2020 was okay. It really was. Obviously, the furlough scheme helped us. We closed down because at the beginning we didn't really know what our clients' intentions were. So at the beginning, we ended up shutting down. We didn't work for 7 weeks in total, and that was difficult because when you'll know this, when you're a director owner of a business, it's very difficult to put it down. Now I know the guidelines were you could do some internal maintenance of your business, you could do training and that sort of stuff, but it's very hard to actually not do something which was going to have a positive effect in terms of finance. So I personally found that very difficult. I think we all did. All of the board found the same thing. But after that, when we came back out, we were presented challenges. Definitely, getting materials, supply chain was difficult. But it was, it gave us, because we weren't answering the phone all day long, and it gave us we did have that time to try and manage our way through it.
Excellent.
2021 was different. At the start of that was difficult because I think second lockdown, businesses then were thinking, okay, what's going to happen now? Now there's no clear pathway. We thought we had a clear pathway in 2020. We came through it. Now we're being told we've got to go back into lockdown again. So the first 6-7 weeks of 2021 was difficult, and it was difficult. We had to have some sort of fairly serious senior management meetings about what we're going to do, because this is not, we can't continue in a way that we are. We're very proactive as a business in how we react to things. We try to be proactive rather than reactive. So we set a lot of plans out, and then it picked up very quickly. I think businesses thought, okay, well, we've got to continue to operate. I think everyone thought, well, we can't just give up. We've got to try and pursue our goals for this year as much as we can. And so things picked up, and then back to another level now as we sit in July, probably as busy as we've ever been, really.
Excellent. So with the opportunities, and not only being able to top up Suntown for 7 weeks last year.
It was nice, yeah, absolutely.
And also to probably give you a bit of headspace. It was forced upon you, but it would have given you an element, I suppose, of in between kind of worrying, topping up the town, but also thinking about the business and kind of that strategy element.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've always done that as a business. We've always sort of like I said earlier, we've always been quite proactive in the way that we've dealt with situations, tried to be on the front foot, and we did what a lot of businesses do. We utilised the furlough scheme to our advantage, because we were able to do that, and we were able to, convince our staff that, look, this is not an ideal scenario, but we're in an industry which would be struggling without this scheme. So, and to be honest, all of our staff were really understanding. They understood the situation, and we utilised the furlough scheme to our advantage to keep them on board. And we slowly filtered people back once the restrictions started to lift. And we've, I think from a personal point of view, headspace is not necessarily a good thing, because you want to be, when you're an owner director working in a business, and on a business, obviously, that there's a difference between the two. It's very hard to let your levels drop. So all of a sudden, I may not have been sort of actively interacting with clients during that period, but what we're then doing is, okay, well, where can we improve our systems? Where can we improve our processes? What plans can we put in place so that when we come out, and so you're always busy and your mind's always going. And yeah, I must admit, it was a difficult time from a mental, perspective, I think. Well, it was for me anyway.
No, it's a really valid point. And I suppose where I was talking about the headspace, so in relation to what you said, working in the business, you don't get any headspace because you're just constantly, you're constantly answering queries, answering the phone, dealing with staff, or you're looking at the insurance aspect of it and not the business aspect. But when you're working on the business, you want to take a step back from that to then look at like your processes, look at your systems, and then also look at the team as well, and kind of their training requirements, their needs, and how we can improve the team. So it's taking that step out and having that headspace of like half a day or a day where you literally just try and switch off. But similar to you, I do find it difficult, because even on those days, something then comes into your head and you're like, oh yeah, I haven't thought about that before. So kind of let's try that. So yeah, really interested on the opportunities. So from listening, the opportunities last year were to do with landlords or property owners that wanted to basically enhance their buildings whilst they weren't losing any.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly from a commercial point of view, I don't think necessarily residential landlords, but commercial landlords for sure. People who either own property or have a portfolio, or even people in, who are long-term tenants.
Yep.
They were using the opportunity to do that. From a domestic point of view, so obviously we have an element of our business where we work in residential lettings, and the maintenance of those properties. I think that was different. That was different because I think if you were a residential landlord with a fairly small portfolio, perhaps 1, 2, 3 properties, I think those may have had a different view. Those maybe in 2020 may have thought at the beginning of the year, right, this year perhaps we'll change the boiler. In 2019, perhaps they had 2 or 3 call outs to a boiler, and they might be thinking, right, next year we'll get that changed. COVID hits, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, let's just see if we can get through another year. Let's maybe I'm not going to commit that £2,000-3,000 to doing that now, but let's get through. So the sort of the residential side of the properties that we look after, that was affected, to a certain extent.
Okay.
But in terms of the commercial side, yeah, the opportunities were there, and actually once we could see a trend there, we were actually going to clients and saying, look, what's your PPM forecast for this coming year? What had you planned to do? Do you think this would be a good idea during, downtime, etc.? And a lot of people who've got a lot of commercial landlords who had tenants, long-term tenants, but the tenants were then working away from the building. They were then going to the tenants and saying, look, we've got some freeholder requirements that we've got to do. We've got some things that we need to do. We've sort of been putting it off because we don't want to interrupt you from a business point of view. But look, as you're not in the office, should we go ahead and do it now? And it was, I think it was fairly positive all round, really.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, listen to what you're saying then as well. We've seen certainly a shift in the last kind of 12 months, I would say, of commercial being converted to resi. I don't know whether you see that as an opportunity or whether you've had more inquiries to price up those types of
Well,
jobs.
certainly over. I mean, I would say that that's probably something that's been happening fairly frequently over the last 10 years. I think that's not. There's been that we've seen quite a lot of. We've seen premises that have been turned from purely commercial into residential. I think there's danger in doing that because there's if you don't do it properly, it can create some fairly seismic inherent problems. You've got to put yourself in the mindset that a commercial building is built in a different way to a residential building. Okay. So when you're making that conversion, you think, okay, well, it's your energy requirements, your pathology of how the building's constructed and how long it's potentially going to last. Your like I said, your energy performance, your layout, all of that stuff is very pertinent to the decision making when you're going to do that. And what we have found over the last 10 years is there's a lot of properties which have been converted from commercial to residential that haven't done it in the right way, and they're constantly having issues. Generally around things like it's mainly around energy performance. So you get a lot of condensation, a lot of damp, where buildings have not been insulated in a commercial building is insulated in one way and a residential is insulated in another. And then during that transition, corners get cut, and we've seen quite, especially in the residential maintenance part, a lot of the time, you get called out to flats, which used to be offices, and the problems are quite similar. It's always condensation, performance of the windows, performance of the insulation, because the buildings are just built differently at the beginning.
Right. Okay. And that's interesting in itself, because all of those issues that you were talking about there, none of them can be covered under an insurance policy. No. There's not an actual peril, so like a burst pipe or escape of water or storm damage that's causing it. It's almost effectively like a defective workmanship or poor workmanship, or effectively it is. It's like a defective workmanship issue that's not been done.
It's getting hard. It's getting harder and harder from a buildings guarantee point of view. So obviously you've got your industry standards, your NHBC, etc., but they're making it harder and harder to claim against any building defect now. It's unless you've got a problem which is major, and I mean major, a subsidence issue, or a design fault, a major design fault, maybe the roof's not right or something. Anything small, it's very difficult to get the building guarantees to even entertain them. They just, they do make it very difficult.
Yeah, and in fact, a couple that we've been looking at, so the insurers for either the insurance back guarantee or for NHBC, equivalent to like a building warranty, they either want a personal guarantee from the builder or the developer, or the excess is like 5,000. So yeah, on the smaller issues, it's not really going to be cost.
I live in a new house. I live in a new house. Well, I say I was the first person to live in my house. It's 15 years old. And after a couple of years, I had a leak in my roof. And the person that built the house, I went back to them and said, look, we need to invoke the NHBC guarantee. And we did, and I actually got the work done. But even then, the threshold was, I think it was £2,000. The minimum that you could claim was £2,000. Yeah. And having spoken to the contractors that did the work, they were saying, well, that's gone up, that's doubled in the last sort of year, because they constantly push the threshold up. Yeah. So to say that you're saying there's a minimum £5,000 excess is because they just keep pushing it up and pushing it up to make it as hard as possible for anyone to make those claims.
Yeah. So going back to this year, you said it's looking really good, positive. Where do you see?
The start of the year was difficult, but now, now we're entering a period where I think people can see the end, and all of a sudden people are starting to throw. We want to do this now. We want to do this now. Or this that we've quoted a year ago. This is coming back online, or they're starting to really push, and it's it just presents its own challenges, doesn't it? You go from trying to find work for your staff to now trying to find staff for your work. And we're going through a recruitment process at the minute, actually, to bring in some more team members.
Okay, so is there a particular kind of niche or sector that you're finding that's growing at this particular time? And also, you talk about staff. There does seem to be a shortage for like qualified good tradesmen. Are you talking like tradesmen, clerical, both?
Yeah, both. Yeah. So we've sort of at the beginning of this year we recruited some new admin. We're looking to increase that as well. So that's for our admin team. So we're currently looking for new admin staff. We are also looking for skilled operatives as well. It's quite difficult. It's very difficult to employ good trades guys because a lot of people are already working within the construction industry competently. You know, they are competently working in it, and they've got a job and they're able to do that job, etc. The type of work that we do, where our buildings go from a tiny 1-bedroom flat to a 150,000 square foot retail or warehouse space, it's very range. You know, there's a lot of range to it. Sorry, so you might bring someone in who is used to being proficient in a particular area, and you move into somewhere else and they struggle. It's very difficult to get trade staff in. But what we have had conversations with fellow business owners is that once the furlough scheme finishes, that there are going to be a lot of businesses which maybe are not able to continue. You know, they've used the furlough scheme to their advantage to try and keep their staff, you know, available, with the plan to, you know, get their business back to where it needs to be. The furlough scheme is going to come to an end, and they've not managed to do that. You know, whatever clients they've had may have looked at other options, or whoever their clients are. Once the furlough scheme finishes, then they're going to have all this staff, but perhaps not the work to give them. And at that point, we're confident that the market will be saturated with skilled people, you know, because businesses will not be able to survive, and, you know, and that will be an opportunity for businesses that are still operating to be able to maybe increase their staffing levels with good quality trades guys.
And so the furlough, remind me, it finishes in October, doesn't it? Is it October?
September or October, yeah.
Okay, so you could see that for the last quarter of this year.
Yeah, I think you know, you will see it. I mean, it's not a very pleasant thought, but it, you know, well, one business's misfortune, maybe another business's gain. You know, it's just the way it's going to be, I think.
Okay, and you mentioned earlier as well that you deal with some letting agents, managing agents.
We do, yeah.
How's that kind of sector been for you, and how do you see that sector growing, or how you fit into that sector as it grows? And the reason I ask this is that there's a lot more properties that are let at the moment, where people there's a few things actually come out where I was going with this is that it was anticipated there's going to be more divorces where people have been stuck together and either make or break their relationship, so possibly the rental market could go up. That's quite an interesting point. And the fact of financial difficulties for some people may force them to look at either selling their house and going into rented, or on the other side of the coin, people that are taking advantage or took advantage of the housing market boom that we've literally just gone through to sell to get the maximum and then go into rented. So do you see that the rental market is increasing for managing agents, and how you would fit into that?
Well, so we do have a specific arm of our business which is dedicated to residential lettings maintenance. We've got a long list of the clients who we have long-term relationships with. It's not part of the business I work in a lot, so, you know, I can give you what my understanding is. Certainly there is, and this is through direct conversation with lettings managers, etc. I know that the lettings market is very buoyant. You know, I pretty much know that you can, you know, you put a dwelling out for rent at 9 a.m. and by 12 it's generally gone. Yeah. You know, and I don't know if that's because of what you've just alluded to. People have, you know, decided to capitalize on equity in their business, in their property. They've sold it, they've kept the money, they've gone into rented. and whether that's one of the reasons why, or just that people can't get mortgages anymore. I don't know. So there always seems to be a lot of residential property, for sure, that's being let, that needs maintaining. It's what the difficult part is. It's converting the interest into actual tangible work, if you like. We get a lot. The quotes are coming through, crazy. We get loads of stuff coming through, because that's the responsibility of the agent. The responsibility of the agent is to maintain the property on behalf of the landlord, but with the interest being the tenant. But it's one thing identifying work that needs to be done. It's another thing convincing a landlord that they've got to pay to do it. And I think that's where we're getting a lot of interest, and we're doing lots and lots of quotes. And our order book in terms of surveys is huge, but it's converting it's converting those quotations into paid work, which I think is where it's becoming harder, because landlords are thinking, well, do I really have to do this? If you're, but it's true. I'm constant. As I say, I don't work in that side of our business really, so I don't see it as much, but I have done in the past, and I've always been sort of shocked at the quality, the acceptable standard for living. I've gone into places before and was thinking, this is horrendous, but they can still let it. People will still pay to live there, and I think maybe the more scrupulous or unscrupulous landlord might be thinking, well, if I'm getting my rent, and I can keep putting off spending, then I'm just going to continue to do that. And I think that's quite common.
What's the sort of conversion rate? And I understand, I appreciate, sorry, you don't work in that side of the business as much, but as an idea for people listening, do you know what sort of conversion rate when you're quoting for letting agents that it goes ahead? Would sort of like 10%, 20%?
I would say 30 to 40%, I'd say.
Okay, that's pretty good though. So that's like 1 in 3, pretty much. 1 in 3 quotes you'll get.
Yeah, it is. I agree. But if you're sending a surveyor out to do 6 quotes a day, sure, and he's returning 2 of them, that's not down to him, by the way. We're getting instruction on 2 of them, but the contract value of each of them is, £200-300. By the time you put your margin in, you're not even covering what you're paying your surveyor. So, really, sure, as a business, our aim is to get 100%.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we can do everything we can within our business to try and do that, by being professional, by being competitive, by being thorough in the way that we're surveying and presenting our reports to people. And I'm confident that we do all of those things. Yeah. What you then got to rely on is that the person who has, either has instructed the request, or the person that is responsible for maintaining the property, have the same level of sort of desire to do it. So I think we're doing everything we can our end. You've just got to have faith that the other end, that people have committed to doing, basically committed to their responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, changing slightly now. I know you've been great at doing some insurance claims on behalf of or for some of our clients, let's say, and where you really add value for us with our clients is that A, you're always available to go and see them. B, the process of the report that you provide to insurers literally ticks every box for that insurer to validate the quote and to authorize it fairly quickly. We have found that clients will sometimes get their own contractors, and you don't get a report, you just get an estimate that's on a 1-pager that just says it's X amount. There's no breakdown, and it just delays the whole claims process. So we see that very much adds value, and that you're always able to start the work fairly quickly once it's been authorized. I was just wondering, from your point of view and from your side, dealing with insurance work, is it a lot different to your other commercial work, and how does that fit into your business?
Well, I mean, in terms of the way that we report, we do that across our business. We have a business model, and whether we are putting a quote together to hang a door, in a residential let, or whether we're tendering for a dilapidations process in a warehouse, or whether we're dealing with fire damaged properties, which are an insurance claim project. The way that we do things is the same across the board. Now, that's a business model for us, and it's a speculative business model. So I'm well aware that the thought of sending somebody out to training somebody to go out and do a survey using the photographic software. We use Site Audit Pro to do all of our reporting, putting together a quote in the way that we do. We do everything at the front end, so that when we win a quote, then the admin team just pick it up and do it. And what I mean by that is everything is costed, everything is recorded. We use Google spreadsheets to record everything that we, the way that we build our quotes, so that if we get something, the admin team just pick it up and say, right, we can order. We know we've got links to materials. We know what we need. And that's a lot of work at the front end, which I don't think a lot of people do. A lot of people do estimate off the top of your head, well, okay, that's going to be that, it's going to be that, and they round things up. And I understand why that happens, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. People have to run their business how they have to run their business, but it is speculative from our point of view. We pay a lot out in overheads and fixed costs for things that we don't necessarily get any return on.
Right.
The flip side of that is that the people who get that think, oh, this is decent, and when you compare it to what other people produce, if and I like to think we are competitive, of course, we want to be competitive, but if it's down to personal choice, what we hope is that the person looking at the other end and think, well, I've got report A and piece of paper B, where do I safely want to spend my money? And then hopefully that's what you're alluding to. That's reflected in the fact that when we do report and we do provide quotes, and they are structured in a way which, they are easily readable, you understand where you are, you can see where your costs are. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. The benefit of that, and thank you for your comments, is what you've just said there. It ticks the boxes for people, and it's a fairly corporate business model as well. It's done in a way which makes everything transparent as much as you can feasibly be, and also makes it very easy for the person on the other end to see what you're proposing.
You just hit the nail on the head. So one of our mottos, if you like, as this business is insurance made easy, and to make life easy. And where it really works as well for us working with yourselves is we're the first point of call for any claim. So client phones, they've had, it could be a burst pipe, could be a fire, it could be storm damage. So we're the main first point of call. And then from that, we look to protect clients in a bubble. And like I said, or alluded to earlier, you add value to that. It's we pass your details over, one phone call to you, you're generally there within 48 hours, 24 hours, depending on how urgent it is, even sometimes the same day. And by providing that report, you then, once the work has won, you manage the claim with us. And that, again, provides that protection bubble to our client. And ultimately, that's the reason they stay with us. So the fact you're able to bring in different trades to do any type of work as well, it just gives that protective bubble to the client, peace of mind.
Well, I mean, it's interesting you should say that, actually, and I'll sort of respond in two parts to that. The sort of what some might consider to be overkill in the way that we report, the way that we present, and the way that we deliver our sort of business model to people. A lot of that is we've actually stumbled across it by proxy, because when we used to do asset recovery and we were working for national asset managers, I don't know if you deal with any asset managers, or any of your your viewers will know, they're very, very difficult people to deal with. They're barbaric in the way that they treat contractors. They are, but they're also not technically minded. So we always had to produce everything that we did in a way that someone with no understanding of building pathology, someone with no real desire to understand what they're looking at, can pick up a report and know exactly what they're looking at. Because if we didn't, we just get bombarded with questions. You know, what does this mean? Have you included this? What does this mean? So we always did it in a way which was overkill, so that, you know, Joe Blogs could pick it up and just say, yeah, I understand that. You know, and that's how we've always done things. You know, and that's sort of where in a sort of perverse way, why we are where we are. And we've also worked with what's considered to be reasonable SLAs, so service level agreements. We set those ourselves. Not, you know, we will respond to an email within a certain amount of time. We will attend a property within a certain amount of time. We will return a report within a certain amount of time. You know, we will start a job with an instructed job within a certain amount of time. You know, and we have that. That's part of our training. You know, all of our staff come in. You know, this is what our aim are. This is our internal SLA, and this is what we work towards. And you know, it does pay dividends in the way that we present ourselves. Don't get me wrong. We know the guidelines. We don't always hit them. You know, and you know, but that's business, isn't it? You know, you've got to have targets. The people that work, you've got to have targets. And you know, if you're going to be a successful business, then has to be managed in a productive way.
Absolutely, and it comes down to core values, cultures, beliefs within that business. And so, yeah, kind of adding to what you were saying, the claims element for us is probably one of the most important aspects of our business, because that's where you retain clients, and it's where you tend to win new clients, is because of the claims process that we have and having those service agreements. You mentioned about materials being at the forefront. So at the beginning of the customer journey for you, when you're quoting, pricing up materials, have you seen an increase in cost of materials and also a delay in obtaining materials? Has that affected you at all?
Oh, existentially. Yeah, absolutely. You know, the cost of materials in some sectors has doubled in the last 18 months.
Right.
I saw an analogy on social media, you know, a few weeks ago. I think the guy, he's a general builder, but I think he's a plasterer by trade. He put a couple of pictures on Facebook, and it was, you know, it wasn't his post. It was something which he reposted, but it was. I think it said July 2019, and you know, for £1,000 you get this, and it was a pallet load of materials. July 2020, the pallet have actually had nothing on it. You know, and you know, 2 years ago you paid £1,000, you got this much material. You pay £1,000 now, and you get, you know, virtually nothing. And that is the truth, you know. And materials is difficult to get hold of. Very difficult to get hold of, depending on what they are. I mean, as you may well already know this if you've had these conversations, but British Gypsum, who are the main manufacturer of plaster, concrete, cement, etc., during the first lockdown, they completely shut down.
Yeah.
Even though they were in the construction industry and technically could have continued, they just shut down. And it created mayhem. It was absolute, and it still is now. You know, getting cement-based products at the minute is, the difficulty is, you can price something, okay? You price something and you record your costs for it and you build them into your quotations. But even at that point, you can't. There's no fixed cost. You have to contact a supplier directly and say, right, what are you selling this for at this time? And you use that price. When by the time your job gets authorized, it's either not available and you've got to go somewhere else with a different price, or they've changed their price point. And I mean, they're open about it. They turn around and say, you know, this price is not guaranteed. You know, this price is subject to change at any time. You try putting that on your quotation. You try putting that on your quotation. You're saying to someone, this job's going to cost you this amount, but that's if you do it today. It could change, you know, it could change at any time. People are going to look at that and it's going to make them nervous. You know, it's difficult.
Yeah, no, do you know, it's a good point actually, because I'd imagine your customer or the final customer, let's say, who receives it, is thinking that that's actually coming from you, but it's not. It's further down the chain.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a knock-on effect to you. So, I mean, have you found that labour costs have gone up as well, or have they stayed fairly steady?
Well, I mean, labour costs will always go up. You know, if They do. It's as simple as that. And actually they should do. You know, what we're paying in terms of wages for, say, a multi-trade now is a huge increase on what we were paying 5 years ago. And rightly so, it should do. You know, if you want the economy to grow, then you've got to contribute to that, you know, and increasing what you pay in wages is a big part of it, you know, for sure. I think, you know, we did a review. We had an annual review, senior management review a month ago or 3 weeks ago, and we did a costing exercise on salaries. And generally, we pay over and above what the industry standard is for salary. Not suggesting we get above the industry standard in terms of quality at all times, but you know, where we are as a business, I'm glad we are where we are as a business, because when we do want to attract the better quality of staff, hopefully we're in the right place to do that. So I guess in terms of direct staff, we're in control of that. In terms of supply chain, yeah, I think that we are paying more for supply chain, you know, but I think it's accepted, you know, and we work on the same formulas as we've always done in terms of how we cost our jobs. So that cost is passed on to the client. Where it's affecting our business is where we put a cost together for materials 3 months ago, and we get it authorized, and then it's coming back and we're having to pay more. We're having to take that hit because it's difficult to go back to a client and say, well, you know, we're going to have to charge you more now because the prices have gone up. They won't accept that.
Sure. So appreciate for your time as well. We've kind of come towards the end of it, but do you know or have an idea about where the opportunities lie? Do you see it over the next, say, 3 years?
Well, I think the opportunities in terms of residential, I think the opportunities do lie with letting them. You know, I think if I had a lump sum of money, I think, and I was balancing, you know, do I go and do a property up and sell it for a profit, or do I go and do a property up and let it? I think although your immediate return is greater with resale, I think your guaranteed future sort of income will be with letting. And I think if you've got money and you want to invest it, buy a property, do it up and let it, because you'll let it easily, no problem. Okay. I think from a commercial point of view, it's quite difficult to predict, because whereas we would always in the past, where we're doing, I don't know, end of tenancy dilapidations for commercial buildings. So you've got a warehouse, and the landlord has instructed a surveyor to come and cost the dilapidations. It's the responsibility of the tenant. They agree between them what will happen. Let's just say it's a cash settlement. Tenant pays their cash settlement based on what their liability is in returning the building to its former state. They can then leave their tenancy and move on to other places. Now, always in the past, a surveyor would say to a landlord, right, you've got the money, spend it on the building, make it brand new. It's a nice blank canvas, then away you go with your new tenant. What we have noticed in the last year is that surveyors, for the first time, are saying to landlords, maybe don't do the work, maybe take your £50,000 settlement, put it in your bank, because you could spend your £50,000 and have yes, you'd have a lovely brand new asset, but it might sit empty for a year because businesses are not taking on that liability at the minute because of the uncertainty. You know, you're going to go and commit yourself to a 10-year lease at, you know, £50,000 a year when you don't know what state your business is going to be in because of the COVID situation. So for the first time ever, surveyors are saying to landlords, well, just keep the money. You can either make the agents work harder in trying to let it. Obviously, an agent will let a brand new building much easier than they will one that needs a lot of work. But at the end of the day, they don't care. If we can't let a brand new building, then we're not going to be able to, it's not going to be any issues if we can't let a building that needs a lot of work to it. So I think an opportunity in terms of investment might be from a commercial point of view, is that there might be a lot of landlords which have got properties which need work, but they're not willing to commit to doing them up. And you know, if you're a cash buyer, obviously the scale is much bigger. But if you're a cash buyer, you might have a better chance of purchasing something industrial now than you will have had in the past, because people don't know, because there's a lot of uncertainty.
Okay. And no, that's great. Thank you. Do you see any opportunities within kind of your business structure or business model diversifying over the next 2-3 years?
Well, I think we have to stick to what our core values are. That's to continue and improve, to continually work hard to be better in all areas, from the owners all the way down to the part-time admin staff. We've all got our own sort of company goals, which we know we need to stick to together. I think the opportunity may come for us to perhaps envelop other businesses, businesses, like I said earlier, that come out of the furlough scheme, small businesses with 4 or 5 core staff who are decent. What's going to happen to that business? Well, is there an opportunity for us to maybe take them over, incorporate them into ours, take their staff, and improve ours in that way? I think there are certainly opportunities for we know one of the things we want to do in the next year is relocate. That's we want to get something a little bit more suitable for us as a business in terms of real estate. And I think there may be opportunities to buy, whereas there might not have been in the past. Whereas landlords might want to, they want to continue renting. I think a lot of sites, they need a lot of work, and perhaps, well, what's the best thing to do now? And there might be an opportunity for us to buy somewhere rather than rent. We don't know, but that's something we're looking at the minute.
That sounds great. And do you know what? We're looking at something. Lease on our office runs out in 2 years, actually. So we'll be looking at probably next year something similar to try and buy offices. Leon, it's been great talking. Thank you for coming on the show. Much appreciated. Any final words of wisdom before we finish?
Final words of wisdom, what, business related or
up to you, whatever you like.
Well, pertinent to where we are in this moment in time, my words of advice would be to take Monday morning off.
Good advice.
Because I'm hoping that something that happens on Sunday might be a once in a lifetime experience. But I think I think in terms of business, just believe in yourself. Believe in your ideas. It's hard to run a business. It's really hard. The knocks, the gains are little, and the knocks are massive. But if you can keep getting out of bed in the morning, you can keep finding your way to your desk and sitting down. That's the hard part. Once you've done that, it's you can build your own pathway. It sounds a bit perverse, sort of giving advice to someone who doesn't actually listen to it himself. But I think you just create an environment that try and create an environment that gives you your best opportunities to be the best version of yourself. Really.
Absolutely, and
that's easier said than done, by the way.
It is, absolutely. I was listening to something yesterday, and there was 2 elements. It was unwavering faith and maximum effort. And with those, it kind of gives an equation to get the outcome that you're looking for, whether it be a short term or long term. You eventually get there with that. But yeah, no, do you know what? That's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wes.
Thank you for listening to the Glowshaw Business Chat series. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, or if you'd like to discuss how we can help your business mitigate the risks you face, please email Wes on wesleyhaines@glowshaw.co.uk.